Blood is the substance that flows through all of those blood vessels that we just talked about. Blood is made up of a liquid portion. The liquid portion is called plasma. It's mostly water, but it has a bunch of other things dissolved in it too. Proteins, electrolytes, other substances. And floating in that plasma are some special cells. Blood has cells. We have 3 different types of what are called cellular elements. So let's just take a look at them here. We have red blood cells, also known as erythrocytes. Erythrocytes are the cells that are very specialized for carrying oxygen. And the way they do that is with a molecule called hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is very good at latching onto oxygen and just transporting it to where it needs to go. One problem that can come up if a person doesn't make enough hemoglobin is anemia can result. This is a condition where there's not enough oxygen available to the tissues. This can be due to either not having enough hemoglobin or not having enough red blood cells. Either way can lead to not enough oxygen being delivered to the tissues. So one interesting note here with regards to red blood cells, our bodies are amazing with regards to being able to detect things internally and make changes to fix them. A good example of this is if the blood is not high enough in oxygen content, what happens is the kidneys will make a hormone called erythropoietin, and erythropoietin circulates through the blood, makes its way to the bones, the bone marrow, and it triggers new red blood cells to be formed, which takes place in the bone marrow, inside of our bones. So this is amazing. It's like the fact that there's low oxygen leads to the kidneys producing this hormone. This hormone causes us, our bodies, to make more red blood cells. And so that helps to correct the problem, right? If you have more red blood cells, then hopefully they'll be able to carry more oxygen to all of your bodies. So it's kind of a self-correcting system. This is another example of homeostasis being maintained. But anyway, erythropoietin, EPO, this is that substance that's produced by the kidneys. We also have white blood cells in the blood, known as leukocytes. There are many different types of leukocytes. They all kind of work together in order to allow us to combat infections. So if we get an infection, maybe some bacteria make their way into the body, these white blood cells do a good job of tracking them down and getting rid of them. So things that are not supposed to be present are not allowed to stay. Finally, the third type of cellular element is right here, the platelets. Platelets are derived from cells. They're not actually whole, complete cells, but rather they come from sort of they're fragments of cells actually. So what they do, their big job is to allow us to form clots, blood clots. When a blood vessel is injured, what they do is they stick to the injury point and they kind of recruit other proteins to come over and stick to that area also, and it ends up making this patch right there at the site of injury. And that patch stays put until the blood vessel has had a chance to be repaired. So this helps to prevent blood loss. Clotting is something that is extremely interesting, but also extremely necessary to control tightly. So if we have not enough clotting going on, if clots don't form, then that's a problem, right? Because if you have an injury site, then you'll just keep bleeding. So it's very key that clots form. However, it's also very key that we don't clot too much. If a clot grows and becomes too large, it may actually start to obstruct the blood flow through that blood vessel, and that can lead to other problems like a stroke. So this is something that has to be kept in a really tight range of control, and our bodies generally do a good job at that. There are some genetic conditions that can lead to problems with clotting. Hemophilia is a good example of that. I think we mentioned that earlier in the semester when we were looking at pedigrees. So let's see here. The blood, a big thing that the blood is doing is carrying gases around for us, carrying oxygen to the tissues and allowing us a way to get rid of carbon dioxide that's produced by our cells during cellular respiration. So that leads us to the respiratory system. The respiratory system is specialized to facilitate this gas exchange that needs to happen. There are three major stages to respiration. There's breathing, which you're familiar with, just taking air in and out of the body and at the lungs. And breathing is something that we have some control over. So breathing happens automatically if you don't think about it. But you can also control it voluntarily if you think about it. And that's through the use of specific muscles. When we breathe, what we're doing is controlling the diaphragm, which is a muscle right below your lungs, kind of right below your rib cage. And then we also have muscles, believe it or not, we have muscles between our ribs. And when we contract those muscles, it changes the whole size of our thoracic cavity. So let's just take a look at this picture over here. This is a picture showing the lungs, an illustration of the lungs. And what happens if we move our diaphragm down? If we contract the diaphragm, it will move downwards. And then if we also contract our rib muscles, our ribs will naturally kind of flare outwards. So if we do those two things, the whole size of our chest cavity gets larger, and consequently, air rushes in to fill that space that we just opened up. So that's how an inhalation happens, also called inspiration. This is taking air into the body, and then gas exchange can happen on the moist surfaces inside of the lungs. Once that gas exchange happens, the blood transports the gases to where they need to go, and then when we get to capillary beds, that's where diffusion can take place.